There's nothing wrong with you. That's number one. You got to know that. There's nothing wrong with you. Everybody will experience grief.
Sorry.
Well, maybe you. Yeah, we're talking about him, man. You're excluding him in this. This is an Urban Genius production.
What's up?
Hi.
How you doing, Krystal?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm blessed. Thank
All right
you.
now.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited for another sit down with Miss Krystal Smith, therapist at large.
Not the at large.
Let's tell everybody your qualifications so they'll know why they should be listening to you today talk about grief and relationships.
All right. So I am a therapist, as Remi just said, coach, author, and speaker. And so I've been doing this for just a little bit. So I'm excited to speak to you guys today. Yeah.
In grief, there are 5 stages of grief, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me if I'm right.
So you are right.
Okay.
So textbook, right? So textbook. A woman named, I believe it's Elizabeth, but she goes by, Kubler-Ross. She developed these 5 stages of grief.
Okay.
So textbook-wise, the 5 stages. The first stage is denial. The next one is anger. Then you have like the bargaining, then depression, and then acceptance. So we say clinically that people will typically go through these stages, right? But I've seen it like, people don't necessarily go through those stages just like that, right? Okay. It's not a particular order. And research says that too, like you won't experience it in that order all the time, but at some point they say you will experience like one of these stages or whatever. So I mean, there are 5 stages, but to me, I think there are many more stages. I think grief is very individualized, and I think it just depends on the person. It depends on the loss. So it's kind of hard to like put it in a category of just 5 stages. That's for me though.
Okay, well, you are the clinician
but there's other clinicians that might say
17 years
something.
of experience. And so this is all based on your experience. So
Okay, yeah,
I could care
for
less
sure.
I could care less about the other clinicians.
Understood.
Respectfully, though.
Respectfully. There's some great people out here doing great work.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
But you said that everyone doesn't experience it, and which is funny because when I'm experiencing it, I try to track it based on the 5 steps.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, I'm going through bargaining right now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's understandable.
So,
Bargaining
but
right
you said people only experience one of those.
It depends, right?
Okay.
Not everybody.
Come on, tell me.
Right? You know what I mean?
Tell me.
Okay, so you got the first stage, right?
Okay.
The first stage is denial.
Okay.
So I lost my dad over 10 years ago.
Okay.
Like 2015, so we're coming up into that 11-year mark in October. So I definitely was in that denial stage, like 100%, you know what I mean? So most people go through that like initial denial shock, like, oh my goodness, this person died. And grief is not just, you don't just lose people by death. That is a major loss. But people also lose people in relationships, like I'm sure we'll talk about. But also when they leave jobs and just, any form of a change, in terms of loss. So denial is that first stage. And then the next stage is anger, right? Because after they realize that, oh my goodness, I lost somebody that I love, I'm pissed off now. I'm mad.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why? Why this had to happen? Why, whatever. So that's the second stage. And then they go into this bargaining stage, right? This bargaining of like, if I would have done this, maybe they would still have been here. Like, like if they died in a car accident, like if I would have just been able to like get there, in time, you know what I mean? Like if I would have just told the doctor, you know what I'm saying? You're going through that stage. And then after that, they say it's like the depressive, state or, the depression. And then finally that 5th stage is like where you just accept like, okay, this is what it is. So I think that people, sometimes I've seen in my clinical work, I've seen people go from denial to like, depression and back to denial. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's why it's not really fixed in stone.
Interesting.
So, but I have seen people hit those stages. Yeah.
So when you're dealing with someone as a clinician, when you have a client, you may have textbook, right? But how do you deal with, I know it's on the individual case. Obviously, that's what I'm learning in this moment. Because I would think that this is textbook, but obviously everything is not the same. When we were talking about this, I was saying that, people, I could imagine what it's like if you lost somebody, like you said, somebody who dies in a car accident, the experience is way different than when Granny was 97.
For sure.
In your experience, how do you see them overcome that? Because that's gotta suck to not be able to get out of one of those 2 phases. How do you complete that cycle if you're stuck in it?
Yeah.
But and have you seen anything like that before?
Absolutely, absolutely. So grief is really tricky, right? So I look at grief as like a major root. When we're talking about healing, I like to visualize like a tree, you know? So you have your fruit on the branches of the tree, and then you have, of course, you have the branches, the stem, and the roots. And so when you have grief that's not processed or you stuck in that cycle, a lot of times people don't know that it's grief. They're just looking at, oh, well, I'm working all the time. I'm working, and maybe they picked up some sort of addiction, addictive behavior. Maybe they're, they could be sad and things like that. So you have all these other manifestations of different behaviors, but they don't know this grief. So part of therapy is to sit with the person and start to basically I call it putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
Okay.
And then you can realize and you can track like, okay, well, 6 months ago when they started this new behavior, their mom died, or 2 years ago, you know what I mean? And then you start putting the pieces together. So if you do get stuck in those cycles, it can lead to what we call maladaptive coping.
Okay.
That's where your addictive behaviors come from.
Okay.
That's where, just all those kind of things come from.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Maladaptive
Coping behaviors.
Oh, wow. That was, nobody's going to be like, you're doing maladaptive coping.
You're right. It's clinical. You know what I mean? I don't even think, I don't use it in sessions. Like, this is a maladaptive coping behavior. Like, what? Bro,
No, what?
if you don't speak real English to me, bro, you know too much and you need to get back on track. Oh, okay, now we're on the same page. Got it. I got you. Relatability is important.
I'm going to share with you my experience with grief and what led me to therapy.
Okay.
I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I dealt with abuse as a child, and then my mother died when I was young as well. And when you're young, I don't think you know that you're dealing with these things. You don't know I'm dealing with depression. I don't know why I'm angry and I'm acting out. In my case, I think I became more to cope with what I was dealing with. So as I began to get older, we would start to like have parties and go out, and it was always alcohol. And we're drinking every weekend. We're young because we can, and it's fun.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then you become grown. Yes, we were drinking underage, and then we got grown.
Right.
And then now drinking is what I realized was part of how I was coping after a while. At first it was all fun, but I think it became more of a habit. Like, oh, it's Friday, we're supposed to drink. And then when I realized it was a problem, it was the drinking by myself.
Okay.
And then COVID came around, and we dealt with everything that we dealt with COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm losing my damn mind. I need to see a therapist. And it wasn't until I started having a therapist that I realized that I was operating in trauma for a long time.
Wow.
And I think we should talk about that. I think we should talk about the signs, maybe so that people can help other people when they're experiencing maladaptive behavior.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Yes,
Oh, I'm gonna be saying it. I'm smart.
You hit it on the nail, bro.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. The syllables and all,
Maladaptive.
Good job. Can't say it too many times now. It'll mess you up. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be real careful.
Oh, I'll be texting. Why did I just text that? That was crazy. Good morning.
Right? So crazy.
But I was operating in trauma for a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, but I don't know that. I think that people around me knew it, but couldn't quite put their finger on it, especially if you never experienced it with me. If you didn't grow up with me, if you just met me, you're like, oh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's fun. Let's do it again next weekend.
Yeah.
And then the trauma that I'm causing, the emotional trauma on myself and others. I think, I often think about now that I'm healing, I wish I could, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Deal with other relationships, go back and deal with certain situations, friends and situationships in a better way, in a better state of mind.
I understand that.
So people operate in trauma often. Do you see that a lot?
100%.
What do you tell them? Like,
Well, first off,
Okay.
I am sorry about your
Thank you.
mom
Thank you. I
dying
appreciate
and
that.
the trauma that you experienced, the abuse that you had. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that, like you said, a lot of people, when they're operating in trauma, they don't realize that they are, operating through a lens of trauma, right? And so I think most of the time, not I think, but most of the time when people come to therapy, they're at their wit's end. And there is a lack of peace and a lack of contentment. That is usually one of the first indicators, you know what I'm saying? And so I don't know what your experience was like, but typically it's like, man, I've come to the end of my road and what I've been doing isn't working, or it's starting to cost me now, meaning now it's starting to cost me friends. It's starting to cost me at my job. I'm showing up late. I'm not doing well. It's starting to cost me in other areas or cost me in my peace. So now I need to be in therapy, you know what I'm saying? So typically when people come, or they can come because their relationship friends or partners are like, listen, he crazy, or she, you know what I mean? It's like, we got to come on and fix this person, you know what I'm saying? Let me pull out my magic wand from the bag. Got you, don't worry about it. But so typically that's why people, come to therapy. So to answer your question, yes, I see that a lot. And so as a clinician, what I usually do is I go from the beginning. Start from the beginning. Everybody doesn't do that, and that's fine, but that's my approach, because you saying that, you losing your mother at such a young age, and then you had that abuse, the way that we develop, I don't want to get too deep, so let me know if I start going too deep.
Why you don't want to get too deep?
Because, I be needing my whiteboards to be like, this is the brain, and then here is the thing that goes to the amygdala. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
The amygdala, we going back to that?
and here's your prefrontal and your orbital cortex, like, you know what I'm saying? So I know I can go
I'm gonna ask
deep,
though, please don't forget your train of thought, because now I want to know what trauma does, what grief does to the prefrontal cortex.
Oh my goodness. So as you are, as we're developing, right, there are certain things that we need, right? Everybody has needs. There's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So you have the need to be loved, you have the physiological stuff like the safety and all that. And so when we don't get certain needs met, whether it's, through abuse, through our parents or loved ones or whatever, this starts to create some form of I don't want to call it dysfunction, but it's an exposure to trauma. And trauma impacts the soul and the brain, right? And also when we see it, when we start to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's the environmental stuff. So we start to behave that way as well. And so as a child, I don't know how old you were when you lost your mom.
I was 11.
You were 11. Okay, so you were really young. So think about whenever things like that happen to us when we're so young, it's almost like, and I want to be very careful when I say this, so definitely please take this with a grain of salt. This is just a depiction or illustration. It's almost like the way you think as an 11-year-old in that area, it's almost like it freezes you. Like it's almost like you get stuck in that 11-year-old
development.
Yes, in that area, right? In that area. And so if it's not processed, let me back up a little bit. You also process it as an 11-year-old, right?
Right, exactly.
And if that narrative is not dealt with or challenged as you get older, you're going to be 45 still processing that as an 11-year-old.
And other things.
And other
traumas.
things. And this is why we see adult women and men
acting like
acting like children, right? And it's no shade, it's none of that. But we always talk about our inner child and stuff like that. I get that. We all have our inner child. But at some point you have to teach your inner child how to grow up.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So if you have that trauma and it's not dealt with, then what happens is the brain, the neurons, the neural pathways, your behaviors, all of that will start to get stuck in that 11-year-old mindset of when you lost your mom.
Well, this sucks to hear.
But the beautiful thing about the brain is anything that can be learned, I always say this, anything that can be learned can be unlearned, right? So neuroplasticity allows you the opportunity to, the way God made us, man, is just so dope. So we get a chance to get new neurons every day.
It feels like you're saying that I didn't grow up until I started healing. Which means
in that area.
Which means I was 11 till I was 30.
dang, Gina, you out here. But no, maybe in that way, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I want to be careful because I don't want nobody to see this and be like, bruh, I'm 85 and I'm still talking about
Too late.
right, and I'm still talking about my childhood trauma. Like, I don't want
but you should
to think that there's no hope, and that's not what I'm saying. Right? There is hope. There's hope. Let me say it again. There's hope. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's hope, guys. but people don't understand that, and they don't understand why when they're triggered, right? Because trauma always brings triggers. But people don't understand that when they're triggered, you can be 45 and you go right back to that 6-year-old girl. Seriously, that's the inner child that was never dealt with and that processed that trauma as a 6-year-old.
Okay, so people always talk about healing that inner child.
Yeah, bro. Bruh, you better heal it and grow it up.
Oh, wow.
Heal it first, because if you don't heal it, it won't grow up.
So how does one do that?
That's a whole nother. Listen, 1877. No, I'm just playing. But I mean, no. So
I get that. I mean, Cliff Notes.
Yeah. So to heal the inner child, you must go back to what broke the inner child.
Okay.
Right. So you always got to start to a place of like problem.
Okay.
You know, when did this begin? What was going on? One of the things, and I'll just say this, but like one of the things I say for therapy, you know, healing the inner child, letters are very powerful. Write a letter to your young self that wasn't able to.
Here you go with writing a letter.
I'm trying to get you an empty chair. It's a part of the Gestalt Method. You get that empty chair and you start talking. I don't say things that I haven't done.
Fact.
So I know this clinically, and I know this personally. Okay? But no, for real, because I wouldn't be, I don't, like, just because we're therapists, or, you know, people who are therapists, don't mean that we're like, you know, we don't go through like too, right? And so part of our ability to relate to other people is not just because we read a book.
Right.
It's because we also lose people too.
Yeah.
It's because we also experience trauma too. You know what I'm saying? So knowing this clinically and personally, I can tell you, for me, front hand, like, letters are powerful. I mean, I put an empty chair in front of me and bawl for hours, you know what I'm saying? Talking to my little girl who felt unheard or wasn't seen at school, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, to really get that out. And so you have to really—
You gotta do that work.
You gotta do the work.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
you're fine. You gotta do the work.
Yeah.
It's hard work. And you don't have to do it alone. That's what therapists are for, right? So you to heal the inner child, I would say do letters.
Okay.
But you gotta give the child what it needs.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And this is very important. And I always tell people this, like, we all have emotional needs, right? I talked about the needs, right? And so whenever you don't get those emotional needs met, just like you grew in your stature, you know, from 11 years old to where you are now, your needs grow too. Because you don't eat the same diet you used to eat when you were 11.
Right.
Do you? Like, you know what I mean? Your diet has changed. It's probably bigger. You're hungry, your appetite. So if your needs were not met, then those same needs that were not met, guess what? As a 30-year-old man, they're greater. And you're going to go and try to find ways to meet the needs that's now this size when they were this size when you were 11.
Damn.
It's crazy, right?
Wow. Okay. What do I say to that shit?
You just
I'm glad I got therapy today at 2:00. Guess what this therapist was telling me today? Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we don't know what we don't know, right? So typically we start from what the problem is right now. So they would, like, if they just lost somebody like 2 months ago, it's like, okay, well, we starting there. But as you continue to meet with the therapist, they start digging. And so then they start seeing patterns, you know what I mean? Like, I call them threads. They start seeing little threads that's been, okay, well, how was that? Tell me about that. You know what I'm saying? So if they just lost somebody, they just experienced, you know, some type of grief, they usually start there where the problem is, you know, what they came in for. And then they would walk them through the other pieces and then talk about any connecting pieces, you know.
You just said a lot of shit. And I'm sure it hit home for a lot of people as it just did just now.
Okay.
Do you have any, talk to the people, let them know they're going to be all right.
You're going to be all right. That's all I got. There is always hope, child.
Yeah.
No, I'm swearing. No, but for real, sometimes we just need that, like, grandma, like, pat on that baby, you fine. But no, sometimes it can feel very overwhelming, right? To start this process, to, you know, we all have something, right? We all have something that we've been through and stuff like that. Number one, there's nothing wrong with you. That's number one. You got to know that. There's nothing wrong with you. Everybody will experience grief.
Sorry.
Well, maybe you. We're talking about him then. You're excluding him in this. No, I'm just joking. But there's nothing wrong with you, man. Like, I always say this. This is what I always say, like, in, you know, the cohorts that I do. Like, what you've been through, like, especially as a child, it's not your fault. You didn't have any control over that. At 11, you didn't have no control over that. The abuse you experienced, you didn't have control over that. But it is your fault if you don't change with a smile. Okay? Because we have resources. You can take, you know, responsibility and accountability. And at some point, we have to begin to blend this like compassion and empathy with action, right? And so I would encourage you guys to take action, you know, call a therapist, get on Psychology Today, you know, whatever, and start the work, right? So there is hope. So I want you guys to know that you can, you know, you can heal, you can change, and you don't have to stay in this place of grief. You don't have to stay in this place of depression. So I know we talked a lot today about that, but, you know, I'm glad you said that because it is important for people to know that, like, sometimes you can just feel like I'm in such a horrible space. I don't even, could I ever get out? You just take one step at a time, one step at a time. Thank you. So crazy. Thank you.
This is an Urban Genius production. I would like to move on to relationships.
Okay.